Takže teraz je priestor na diskusiu, ako pán Zitelmann už avizoval. Vy, ktorí ste tu prvýkrát, tak pripomeniem pravidlá, ktoré dnes sú trochu iné, ale teda v každom prípade, kto má záujem, prihláste sa. Mikrofón poputuje k vám v rukách nášho asistentky, opravujem. A teda platí, ako povedal pán Zitelmann, hovorte prosím vás v slovenčine svoju otázku alebo námet. Využite priestor 2 minút, aby ostal priestor na čo najviac z vás. Takže a to je v podstate celé. Kto má záujem, môžete sa prihlásiť a tešíme sa na vaše otázky alebo námety. Hneď vidím v prvom rade prvú otázku. Nech sa páči, prvý rad. Slovenčina.
Ďakujem. Dobrý deň, Marek Mach. Ja by som...
Excuse me, can everyone stand up here? I see you, but the others not. So, thank you.
Dobrý deň, Marek Mach. Ja by som sa vás rád spýtal, že do akej miery ste sa od ľudí z toho antikapitalistického spektra stretli s vyhrážkami alebo útokmi, ktoré často spájame skôr s tou krajine pravicovou stranou. A ako toto vnímate?
What do you mean with attack?
Skúsim veľmi v krátkosti len povedať moju situáciu. Ja mám iniciatívu, ktorá snaží sa vzdelávať mladých o podpore demokracie a slobody. A čo sa mi vlastne stalo v poslednom období, je, že vnímam nárast antikapitalistických myšlienok medzi mladými. A zo strany týchto mladých sa stretávam s väčšími a násilnejšími vyhrážkami, prípadne slovnými útokmi, ako zo strany profašisticky zmýšľajúcich ľudí. Či sa vám deje niečo podobné a či sa s niečím podobným stretávate, a ak áno, tak do akej miery?
In the serious discussion, fortunately not. But of course, for some very extreme left people, almost everyone is a Nazi or fascist who's not on their opinion. We know this. But for me, it didn't happen so. Of course, on social media sometimes you have a lot of crazy people, and they, as I mentioned before, they tell me how crazy my books are, and that is only shit in their book and all lies. And then, but I react very calm. I ask only, have you read the book? And then if they say no, I wouldn't touch them. So I know it happened for some people. Maybe it can happen to me, but fortunately now I had not in Germany and in no other country I had this experience. Of course, it's controversial, and there are people who don't like me because I love capitalism, and some people are also envious because, as they know, I'm rich. I have 2 doctor degrees, and I pro-capitalist, and I have pretty girlfriend, and there are a lot of reasons to be envious so against me, but for me, I don't care about it. So.
Thanks. Kto ďalší má záujem, nech sa páči, využite priestor. Vidím tu v strede, vpravo.
Dobrý deň, Marian Polášek. Mám jednu otázku a ten taký point na doplnenie, alebo skôr 2 otázky. Prvá otázka sa týka grafu, ktorý ste ukázali ohľadom zelenej agendy a miery Free Democracy Index. Neviem, ako presne ten graf vyzeral, kde tie slobodnejšie krajiny boli viac environmentally friendly ako menej vyspelé krajiny. A moja otázka je, či v tomto grafe bola zaradaná iba samotná produkcia v rámci hraníc tých štátov, alebo či sa do toho zarátali aj, povedzme, priame zahraničné investície slobodných krajín do neslobodných krajín, aby sa vyhli takýmto spôsobom vyšším environárokom v rámci ich domovských štátov.
Let me maybe one question after the other, so it's easier for me. First of all, it's a good question because I know what you want to say. Maybe it's this way that they export all their problems in other countries, and this is the reason. Sorry. I will repeat it. It's a good question, and you can find the answer in the book more detailed, because what you can suppose, this is only in the rich countries, and they export their problems in other countries where there are the environmental problems. The result, it's not true, but the facts and the sources you can find in chapter 3 of this book, but it's a very good question.
A potom ešte druhá otázka, iba ku komentáru k antitrust zákonom, keď ste povedali, že žiadny antitrust zákon ešte nezničil monopol, ale v podstate pointa antitrust zákonov nie je zničiť monopóly, ale iba viac menej chrániť nejakú formu konkurencie v rámci trhu.
First, I didn't say that antitrust laws destroyed no trust. So of course they did, like Standard Oil and so in the past. I spoke only about these companies. My examples, that in these cases it was not antitrust policies, but it was competition. And I think it has, in most cases, not so much effect. They started a lot of antitrust things against Microsoft, for example, in the past. But I think it was not the reason why there were more competition for Microsoft after this. And I think that competition and capitalism is more powerful when you look really what happened with history. I gave only one example, and you have much more in the book. And I know there are some monopolies that were destroyed by antitrust policy, and I know what you want to say, that this is not the aim to destroy, but to protect, that maybe there would be more monopolies if there wouldn't be this government institutions. But I don't believe, because the most important thing is that people want to make money, and they see there is one company, this company has weak points, and the development is usually this way. The company starts, it becomes bigger and bigger, and then in a way they become more slow, not so creative, and they are not so hungry maybe, and there are new, younger, more hungry startups, and they compete with them, and there is new technical innovation, and they destroy the monopoly. This is the way how it happens usually.
Do ďalší mal vzadu ešte jedna ruka, nech sa páči.
Dobrý deň. My name is Kira Matustik. Should I speak Slovak or English?
Slovak, please.
Spomínali ste Škandináviu, spomínali ste Gretu Thunberg. Ja som žila 15 rokov vo Švédsku a mal som taký pocit, že tam existuje niečo, čomu sa hovorí political correctness. Je to spoločnosť čiste kapitalistická, ale zároveň by som... Ako vidíte, je tam rozpor v tej spoločnosti. Je to v celej Škandinávii, ale hlavne vo Švédsku, kde na jednu stranu funguje tzv. Sociálny systém, ktorý je zneužívaný práve tými ľuďmi, ktorí majú peniaze a moc. Najprv to bola Central Party, teraz sú to tí, myslím, zvíťazila dokonca tá pravica. Čo hovoríte vlastne, lebo ste spomínali, že Švédsko je vlastne krajina, kde je ako ten economic freedom. Teda patrí medzi tie krajiny, kde vyznávajú tú ekonomickú slobodu. To je prvá otázka. A druhá otázka je...
For me, it's easier to answer one question after the other. Sweden. There are a lot of people, especially in the United States, who think that Sweden or Denmark is a socialist country. When there were the elections with Bernie Sanders and people said they want socialism, and you asked them, where's your socialism? And they told, this is in Sweden or this is in Denmark. And so I think they know nothing about Sweden and Denmark. You lived there, but they don't know nothing about them. I know a lot about Sweden because I'm very often in Sweden, have a lot of friends there, and I studied their history, and the fact is that Sweden was kind of socialism in the 70s and in the 80s. They had extreme high taxes, much higher than today. Maybe, I don't know whether you heard the story about, I think you will know it, but the others, it's a funny story, by the way, from Astrid Lindgren. Do you know Astrid Lindgren? And she was more left-leaning. She was pro-Social Democratic Party. But then she saw how much taxes she paid. Do you know this story? You know this story? Do you know how much? What's the percentage of her taxes in Sweden? It was in the 70s or 80s. Who knows? 102% taxes. And she wrote an article in the famous Swedish newspapers. She called it a tax fairy tale. And the finance minister was very upset. She said she should go on writing her fairy tales. She can't calculate. She don't understand anything about taxes. But then they made research, and she was right. It was 102%. And even the Prime Minister of Sweden at this time had to apologize and to accuse that they got it wrong. And there were a lot of wealthy people like Ingvar Kamprad, maybe you know, IKEA, for example. He left Sweden, and there were a lot of... And then they saw it was this socialism with this extreme labor market regulation, taxes, and so that it was a real disaster for Sweden. But the Swedish people were so clever that in the beginning of the 90s, they had their pro-market capitalist reforms in Sweden. Of course, I know they have still very high income taxes today, if you compare it with other countries. But on the other hand, for example, they abolished wealth tax. There is no wealth tax. In the United States, we have something, or they abolished it. In the United States, they have inheritance tax, gift tax. They abolished it in Sweden. They abolished a lot of labor market regulation. And today, if you look at the index of economic freedom, what a lot of people will be surprised is more capitalist than the United States, for example. Most people would think the United States is much more capitalist than Sweden, but it's the other way around. And so I think Sweden is a good example also that more free market, more capitalism will lead to better results for the people. They would be much better if they wouldn't have this crazy income tax that are not as high as they were. They are no more 102%, but of course they are much higher than in most other countries. I hope they will have more reforms to reduce taxes, and then they are the capitalist role model for all the world, Sweden maybe.
Nech sa páči, druhú otázku ste mali?
Ďakujem za tú prvú odpoveď. Existuje tu však otázka migrácie, prisťahovalectva a existuje tu, možno, že to netýka sa to ekonomiky, skôr sa to týka etiky, ale napríklad v Spojených štátoch amerických, keď ste tam emigrovali a mali ste šťastie, tak tam môžete urobiť dieru do sveta, zatiaľ čo vo Švédsku nie. Či to súvisí, každá krajina, každý národ má svoje nejaké dejiny a históriu. Škandinávia ako taká je známa tým, že je veľmi uzatvorená, čo sa týka mentality tých ľudí, či je to už dané počasím alebo ich polohou na mape. Jednoducho nepríjmajú nič, čo je cudzie. Zatiaľ, čo dajme tomu v Spojených štátoch sú všetky národy sveta a keď je človek pracovitý, tak ešte v 80. rokoch myslím, že sa dalo začínať niekde ako portman niekde v hoteli alebo krájať mäso a dostať sa až za riaditeľa hotelu, čo v Švédsku absolútne nie je možné. Že, teda, či si myslíte, že ak môžeme hovoriť o národnostnej povahe, alebo tie dejiny nejakým spôsobom ovplyvňujú myslenie toho národa?
I think because you live there, you know much more about possibilities from migrants in Sweden than I do. But I know one big difference between the United States and Sweden if it comes to migration. Sweden was this welfare state where a lot of people, migrants, could get also a lot of welfare, like it is in Germany now. This is one reason why Sweden and we in Germany attract a lot of migrants, but a lot of them there are two different kinds of migrants. Some who have really escaped from war and so like from Ukraine, but there are others who come because of economic conditions and because they know that in a country like Germany, or it was there in Sweden, that you can have also a good living from social welfare. And this is different in the United States. I think there are not so much people who come to the United States because they hope they can live from social welfare there in the United States. And this is a problem. You can't combine open borders with welfare state. You can't have both at the same time. You can have migration, but if you combine it with welfare state, then you will attract, of course, a lot of people. I understand these people. I understand everyone who said, I have bad living conditions, I go there to another country where I can get money, maybe even without working, and I have a much better standard of living than in my poor country where I come from. But of course, it's not possible to combine these both things. And in the United States, they have also different groups of migrants, but in the past they selected migrants in a better way than we did. Or Canada, as another example, they, for example, in the United States, they attract a lot of people from Asia, from China. These people are very, very industrious. They are very good in making money in a lot of cases and in science. Even there were some universities in the universities, and this is something I really hate. They discriminate today against Asian people because they said we don't want to have so much people from Asia at our universities. I don't like this idea at all. But I think it depends. If we speak about migration, we have to differentiate between people that can contribute to the welfare of the nation, people who come there with the idea of hard working or entrepreneurial spirit, or whether these are people who come there because they like the system with social welfare and get the advantage. So I think it's not about being pro or contra migration, but we have to think about more about the reasons. And of course, on humanitarian reasons, you have always to give place for people who escape from war. And this is another thing. But I speak about migration, and I think there are different reasons for migration and different ways how to handle with it.
Thanks, ďakujem. Ešte vzadu bola jedna ruka, potom poďme dopredu. Nech sa páči.
Dobrý deň, David Jenčík. Ďakujem na začiatok za výbornú prednášku. A chcel by som sa spýtať otázku, že ako by ste sa vysporiadali s argumentom, napríklad pri grafe, kde bola znižujúca sa chudoba s nárastom miliardárov, že tie javy jednoducho nesúvisia. Že ide o koreláciu, nie kauzalitu. A dá sa to aplikovať aj k iným grafom. Že ako by sa s týmto argumentom vysporiadal? Ďakujem.
I would explain why one thing has to do with the other, because how become people rich? So I speak not about criminals. I don't speak about a bank robber or dealer or so. I speak about people on the Forbes list of the richest people in the world. And they become rich as entrepreneurs. Look at Jeff Bezos with Amazon, Bill Gates with Microsoft, Larry Page, Sergey Brin with Google. Look at Elon Musk and all these people. They became wealthy because they founded companies or products or service that were very useful for a lot of people. I think almost everyone here use Amazon or use Google or use Microsoft. And this is what means capitalism. The more products or service you create that are good for more people, the richer you will become. So it's not a coincidence that in all these countries that I mentioned, whether it's all over the world or whether it's Vietnam, whether it's China or whether it's Germany or other countries, that when you have more billionaires, that the people who live in poverty become less and less, because these are only two sides of the coin. And the reason is economic growth. Economic growth. Economic growth is the main reason why people escape poverty. And economic growth is the reason why people became wealthy, become rich. So it's not only a statistical coincidence, but it has both developments have the same cause, the same reason.
Nech sa páči, tu v treťom rade bola ruka, takže ideme dopredu do tretieho radu vľavo.
Dobrý večer, ďakujem tiež za prednášku. V podstate už tu spomenul niekto Švédsko aj monopoly a začal by som tým, že napríklad nedávno, minulý týždeň švédsky súd naradil ako keby rozdelenie Svenska Spil, čo je veľký teda švédsky monopol na hry hazardné a teda vznikli z toho dva monopoly v podstate, na kasíno a na iné hry. No a vlastne tá regulácia, mimo to, že tej firme to vlastne neuškodilo, vznikli dve, tak v podstate poškodila akože kopec iných, ktorí možno by chceli akože v tom biznise byť, ale zrazu majú akože na stole ešte o mnoho viac regulácie. A to nie je len v hazarde, ale aj pri Microsofte alebo pri akomkoľvek inom monopole, že vlastne v skutočnosti ako keby ten štát tými reguláciami, ktoré akože do toho systému pridáva, tak vlastne uberá možnosť niekomu s tým práve nápadom užitočným pre veľa ľudí, ako keby prestreliť cez tú konkurenciu, lebo vôbec predtým, ako začne podnikať, musí splniť 300 000 regulácií, 20 papierov, 40 úradov. No a nemá ako keby možnosť vlastne sa realizovať. Zatiaľ, čo už tie existujúce etablované firmy, aj keď to vyzerá zvonka, že v podstate sa ten politik alebo štát alebo niekto snaží to regulovať, tak v podstate im len pomôže, lebo oni jednoducho už majú právnikov všetko a vstrebajú tie náklady do seba. A neviem vlastne či pri tých otázkach, ktoré ste kladli respondentom, alebo keď ste písali tú knihu, že či aj ako keby tento uhol, ako keby ste sa potom nejak pýtali tých proponentov, ako keby toho silného sociálneho štátu, alebo proste ako antikapitalistov, či vlastne nevyrábajú v podstate najväčší monopol, ktorého sa už nezbavia.
Yes, this is absolutely true, and it's also true. The more regulations you have also the more corruption. For example, this is another thing. Because every new regulation is for some politicians a reason to take money, and for some rich people a cause to give money with corruption. And so I would recommend, I think you had here some problems with corruption also, and the best way to fight corruption is also to fight regulation. And it's not only theory. I was in Georgia some month ago, I was several times in Georgia, not in the United States, but I mean here, Georgia in Europe. And I spoke with the leading economists, free market economists there, a friend of mine, Cheer, and he told me that Georgia was one of the most corrupt countries all over the world. Today they have also, of course, they have corruption, but it's much better than it was before. If you look at the Transparency International, you know, they have this transparency ranking, and it became much better if you increase. And I asked, how did you do it? And he said two things. First thing, we fired all our policemen, I think 30,000, from one day to the other. We fired them all. This was the first good thing. And the other thing, we get rid of so much regulations, and the more regulations you get rid of, the less reason is there for corruption. But they have more and more regulation. Now in the European Union, maybe you have heard about this crazy thing they called taxonomy. So that in the end, politicians and government officials will decide what is a good investment, sustainable investment, social investment, and what is a bad. And you can imagine what will happen there. The companies who will be rated or like to be rated as making good investments, yes, they will go to bribe them in the EU. And so I think this is, I know it was not your point, you spoke about the monopolies, but it came to my mind because it's the same thing. This is, regulations hurt much more than people think sometimes. They destroy a lot of things, they are a reason for corruption, and so, of course, I'm not against any regulation. Of course, we need some kind of regulation. We need laws and all this, but I don't know any country today in the world where I would say we have not enough regulations, but I know a lot of countries where I would say we have too much regulation. So I can tell you in Germany, for example, for building permissions, if you want to build new houses, we have in Germany 25,000 different laws and regulations. If 25,000 if you build a house. And then in the end they wonder why not enough houses are built then with 25,000 regulations. This is really crazy.
Ešte môžete zareagovať veľmi rýchlo, ten istý pán, ale slušne.
Ja len vlastne asi ste narážali na TLTRO schémy investičné a tam je naozaj to, že ak bojujeme proti monopolom, tak prečo vlastne Európska únia chce dávať peniaze len firmám s obratom väčším ako 25 miliónov. Čiže naozaj to len potvrdzuje to, že radšej majú tie veľké silné firmy ako proste toho menšieho podnikateľa.
To nebola otázka? Nech sa páči ďalší, kto mal záujem. Áno, tam hneď.
Ďakujem. Chcem sa spýtať, aké najväčšie prekážky vidíte v súčasnosti pri rozvoji kapitalizmu, ktoré neboli odstránené v Slovensku alebo v regióne Strednej Európy? Ďakujem.
Good that you remind me always. If I use this Index of Economic Freedom from Heritage Foundation, I see that in some aspects Slovakia is very positive, but there are some problems. You know, they have, I think, 12 different categories, and I think the worst categories are especially labor market freedom, that you have too many regulations there. I saw another statistic, I think you gave me the statistic, this was very interesting. I think it was a research about European Union and OECD countries, how much labor market regulations they have, and these were 41 countries, and Slovakia was number 36, so it means there were only 5 countries with more labor market regulations than are here in Slovakia. And the next thing is, I think, government integrity. That is also a problem, because this is very important for functioning capitalism, that you have rule of law and government integrity. So I think you know much more about situation in Slovakia than I do, but I think this could be 2 things that where is a lot of room for improvement.
Ja si myslím, že to boli tie hlavné problémy. Dalo by sa dlhšie hovoriť aj o ďalších, ale nemáme teraz toľko času. Takže nech sa páči vzadu ďalších, kto má záujem. Tam, áno.
Dobrý večer, Tomáš Krištofóri. Vy ste hovorili, že treba porovnávať realitu s realitou, nie realitu s ideálom. Dúfam, že to nebude príliš impertinentné, keď vás skúsim porovnať s niekým iným. Aspoň na mňa tak na prvý dojem tá vaša aj prezentácia pôsobí tak trošku ako skôr ako dielo Hansa Roslinga, než ako, povedzme, vedecké diela. Že boli tu tie otázky o tých grafoch, že či je to korelácia iba, alebo je to aj kauzalita. A takto sa to pýtajú vedci, ale myslím, že ľudia ako Hans Rosling a možno vy skôr máte za cieľ povedať, aké tie fakty sú, a už potom vedci nech si skúmajú ďalej tú kauzalitu. A že vy teda chcete hlavne ukázať, aké fakty naozaj sú tvárou v tvár tomu, čo si bežne ľudia myslia. Čiže vidím to zle, alebo tiež sa vidíte trošku niekde tam ako... Teda to je moja prvá otázka, ale že vidíte svoje dielo podobne ako to, čo robí Hans Rosling? Pardon.
I read the book from Hans Rosling and also from Steven Pinker, and I think one interesting thing that they do, and in this way you are right, I do the same thing, they confront polls and popular opinions with reality. For example, if you ask today people whether poverty increased or decreased all over the world, in almost every country, the huge majority of people will tell you that poverty is increasing everywhere all over the world. But if you look at the facts, it is not true. Or if you ask people about environmental conditions, they will tell you everything becomes worse and worse today. And of course there are problems. I don't neglect these problems, for example with climate change. But on the other hand, there are a lot of good news. The quality of our air, of our water in European countries and the United States, it's much, much, much better than it was decades ago. But if you ask people, they say everything becomes worse every day. And I think in this way, the thing that I do is, and you're correct, a little bit similar with Hans Rosling or with Steven Pinker, because I confront popular opinions on the one hand with facts on the other hand.
Ďakujem. Tomáš, stručne, nech sa páči.
Ešte som mal jednu otázku a väčšinou vám namietajú tie Pikettyovské argumenty o posledných 30-40 rokov. Vy hovoríte o príbehu za posledných 200 rokov. Videl som na Facebooku diskusiu pod interview, ktoré ste mali v denníku N, a tam bol jeden taký takýto vplyvný komentár jedného človeka, že nepoznáte povedal ten človek, že nepoznáte tú históriu kapitalizmu v tom 19. storočí. Tá detská práca, dlhé vlastne hodiny pracovné, že sa 15-16 hodín denne pracovalo a tieto veci. Tam ten človek mal potrebu takto povedať. Okomentovali by ste to nejako, alebo že ako to teda bolo tých, povedzme, prvých 100 rokov kapitalizmu, že či je to mýtus, to, čo povedal ten človek, alebo ako to je. Ďakujem.
I think what is the real myth is that before capitalism there was a paradise where all people had a good living, and then became evil capitalism in the cities. People came there from the land side to the cities, and everything became worse. But why did they go to the cities? Because it was beautiful there. No, because there were hunger, there were poverty. This was the reason. And then they came to the cities, and of course, not everything is perfect. And if we compare it with the situation today, of course, it was crazy how long people had to work, child labor and so on. But this was not, as people tell us, only because of the labor movement and social democrats that things became better. No, it was the biggest reason is because capitalism developed more and more, and if capitalism developed, people are more productive and wages will rise, and so some people, they tell me, that people came out of poverty, that it's better now than it is 100 years ago. It's only one reason. It's for our trade unions, our workers' movement. And then I asked them another question. So, and what's the reason why situation became better in China in the last 30 years? Because they have such a strong trade union there, or labor movement, or in Vietnam? No, the situation became better because of economic growth. Economic growth is something that makes situation better for people. And of course, the early years from capitalism, there were a lot of things worse than today, but they were worse before. And with children work, it was about thousands of years we had this phenomenon of children's work. And the good news is, in the last 20, 30 years, there was a reduction. Millions and millions of people, less children than worked. It's good news. Of course, there are problems, but it goes in the good direction. And why is that? Because of economic growth. The parents, they became work, and so the children don't have to work anymore. This was the reason. So I think capitalism is also the best what you can do against children's work.
V ekonomickej slobode sa zvyšovala životná úroveň a sa zvyšuje. Nech sa páči, vzadu posledná otázka, žiaľ, čas sa pomaly naplňuje a potom bude priestor aj pre podpisovanie kníh, takže poprosím, posledná otázka.
Dobrý večer, Daniel Ryba, ja sa chcem spýtať, existujú rôzne rankingy, vy ste nám tu ukázali napríklad ten ranking ekonomickej slobody. Či vás zaujíma, povedzme, aj porovnanie s rebríčkami, ktoré ukazujú subjektívny pocit šťastia ľudí v rôznych štátoch? Viem, že napríklad Švajčiarsko je v týchto rebríčkoch veľmi vysoko, ale povedzme, existuje tzv. Happy Planet Index, v ktorom napríklad Spojené arabské emiráty sú hlboko za Indiou.
Yes, I know this happiness index. There are a different one. We know all it's hard to measure how happy people are, but I think it's a good thing to try it. And I think all in all, I wouldn't be surprised when you see there also that on average in the countries that are more economically free, you know, for example, for Scandinavian countries, that people are happier than they are in Cuba, in North Korea, in a lot of African countries, in Venezuela. So I don't know, but I would guess that there is research about the correlation between, on the one hand, economic freedom and this happiness index. But I would guess that there's also a positive correlation, because in these countries that are more economically free, I know a lot of countries where people are happier than in the suppressed countries. But it's a good point. Thank you for this.
Žiaľ, náš čas sa pomaly naplňa. Viem, že by sme mohli diskutovať ešte veľmi, veľmi dlho, pretože tých otázok je veľa, ktoré sa týkajú či už mýtov, alebo faktov, argumentov a podstaty kapitalizmu a života v dnešnej spoločnosti. Budete mať o chvíľu všetci priestor na podpísanie kníh, ktoré ste si, pevne verím, kúpili. Ja vám chcem všetkým poďakovať, že ste opäť prišli medzi nás, že ste diskutovali a že tvoríte s nami komunitu a rozmýšľate o veciach, ktoré sa týkajú spoločnosti. Chcem poďakovať ešte raz všetkým partnerom, bez ktorých by to nebolo možné, aby sme takéto organizácie robili. A hlavne teraz chcem poďakovať pánovi doktorovi Zitelmannovi za jeho peknú prednášku a vyčerpávajúce odpovede. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure to be here, and I can guarantee you there will be more books from me in your language, and so more reasons to come back here if you invite me. Maybe in the summer when we have better weather, I'd be happy to come here. And maybe a last remark. This book, I think in this room here, I would guess we have more pro than anti-capitalists here in this room. So the book is written for you, not to convince anti-capitalists. Some people ask me, do you think you can convince anti-capitalists with your book? I don't think, because they don't read it. This is the problem. Sometimes it happens. I see it on Amazon sometimes. I was anti-capitalist, I read this book, now I'm pro-capitalist. I'm happy. But I think the majority of the readers will be people who may be emotional, are pro-free market, maybe pro-capitalism, anti-socialism, but they don't have all the facts and all the figures. If they have a discussion tomorrow with, for example, left-leaning so-called climate activists about environmental problems, you don't have to read the whole book, only chapter 3, because I provide you in 25 pages with all the arguments. And if you have a discussion about inequality or poverty, you don't have to read the whole book, read 2 chapters, or then there are other things we don't spoke about today, like, for example, greed, or that what does capitalism that produce a lot of products that we don't need, and all this stuff. There are a lot of other arguments against capitalism. And I think there's no argument where you will not find an answer in this book. And this is the reason you can use it if you discuss with your friends or with other people who are maybe anti-capitalist or not really on one or the other side. Then I want to provide you only with the facts about the topic. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.